Hey, 7th graders, me, Mr. Allard, again with one of your flip lessons. Tonight we're going to be working on life in the colonies 2. Today we're going to talk about some more social, political stuff, kind of like that. Same idea. This already should be in an interactive notebook on page, I think page 44. We should have that already taken care of. So you should know the drill. Fill in the blanks with your notes. Let's get to it. Get me out of the way. Go here. There you go. So, first of all, if you lived in the colonies, 90% of us would be living on a farm. So if we were in a town like Clifton Springs and there were 100 of us, that means that 90 of us would live on farms, 10 of us would not. And that is going to lead to a very, very different life than we are used to in 2017. So we got to take those 2017 glasses, or actually, no, sorry, 2018 glasses off for a second. Because this was not a time period where you went to the store to get the stuff that you need. There's no Walmarts, there's no Wegmans, there's no Tops, there's none of those type of places where we're going to go and get the things that we need. Families during the colonial time period are going to make the things that they need, from food, from clothing, stuff like that. There's no butcher shops, there's no grocery stores, there's nothing. All right, farmhouses are going to be very simple, typically one floor, maybe two floor, maybe about 4 to 5 rooms, kind of a main living room that also equals a kitchen. Bedrooms, probably the only separate bedroom that you may have is there may be a boy's bedroom, there may be a girl's bedroom, but then the parents may have their own. But depending on the class of your family, that could be different. You'd have a fire going all day. They were difficult to start because, again, we're not using lighter fluid, we're not using matches, that kind of stuff. It's going to be used for heat during the winter months, but it's also going to be used during cooking all year round. This is I want to make something quick, let me put it in the microwave type of thing. Farm life also meant many different chores, depending on from milking the cows, mending fence posts, clearing land, butchering meat, collecting eggs, you name it. If you were living on a farm, you were getting that done. In the picture, city life. Not too many folks lived in the city per se. Most of these cities were kind of glorified large towns during this time period, typically maybe 10,000 people in some of the largest cities during the colonial time period. Those big cities would be New York, Boston, Philadelphia, Charleston, South Carolina, those type of New York City, those type of areas. But about 10% of the population would be living in a city and or town. Most of these cities or towns are going to be near some sort of water source, and a lot of people say, well, that's to drink the water. Yeah, that's to drink the water, but it's also to use the water as a power source. Think about the old mill in Phelps, where that's located. Phelps is located there because they use that mill to generate. They use the waterfall to generate water power to make the mill work that they could use to mill flour and all sorts of different things. Cities are going to be noisy. They're going to be gross. Okay? One of the grossest things about a city is there's no paved roads. Think about, I always tell students, remember the 4th of July parades and things like that, Memorial Day parades, Labor Day parades, when you see horses. What do horses typically do? Just leave it there for a second. Just think about it. Yep, that's what they typically do. Now imagine everybody using that horse for transportation. Imagine that happening on a gravel or a dirt road. It was a huge, huge problem with keeping things clean. All right. They're going to be noisy just because of the people. Many of these cities do not have trash collection services, so things are just getting thrown in the street, mixed with that horse manure, things like that. But cities were a little bit more lively. If you lived in a city, you are most likely going to the market, a tavern, a shop, or something like that to get the things that you need. You're not producing as much. You're still probably going to the store or going to the market to get the food to make your food, or to get the cloth to make your clothing, but you're not necessarily going to make it, from scratch yourself like you would on a farm. Also, Fire is going to be a big time danger. Most of these buildings are going to be built with wood. As you can see from the illustration above, they're built really close to each other. So if a fire in one building could easily consume, another building could easily consume an entire city block. Rights. All right, as we know, these are things that you have that the government can't take away. Colonists, for a really, really long time, probably right up until the American Revolution, they're going to see themselves as English citizens. For most of our history as colonies, many of the colonists were still coming over from England, but what is going to happen as more and more American colonists are going to be more American, there's going to be a little bit of a disconnect from that English heritage. However, all of them expected to have the same rights as English citizens, which are going to cause problems when we get to the American Revolution. If you were voting, you had to have kind of 5 things going for you. Number 1, you had to be white. Number 2, you had to be male. Number 3, you had to be owning property. Number 4, you had to be over the age of 21. And then lastly, in many of the colonies, you had to be affiliated with some sort of religion. Particularly the New England colonies, this was the most kind of harshest way. So think about that when we think about rights. There's still some issues with who has rights, who doesn't have rights, things like that, when we think of how democratic these colonies were. Self-government, all right, House of Burgesses is going to be the very first assembly that's going to happen in Virginia. So that very first group where we're going to get together as a colony, we're going to elect people to represent us, to create laws and things like that. Town meetings are going to happen in most of the other colonies. Get me out of the way here. Crime. Each colony has its own laws. There's no overarching like rules that we have today with like federal government and things like that. Nothing like that in the colonies yet. So they're each going to have their own laws. However, they're going to be similar. In different colonies, you're going to have different strictness of laws. So up in New England, where the Puritans are kind of ruling the roost, in Massachusetts and Connecticut and Rhode Island, you're going to have much more religious-based laws. There's a bell for us. Typically in the colonies, if you were kind of a big time criminal, you were committing murder, committing treason, which is kind of going against your country, or you're doing some sort of piracy where you're stealing goods and selling them, or confiscating other goods, that's gonna meet with a death penalty. Stealing, forgery, kind of lying, signing something that's not yours, making fake merchandise, that kind of stuff, is probably going to lead to jail, maybe a whipping or a branding. What they do to kind of animals, where they get the hot iron really hot, and right here was a good one, so you kind of had that mark of a criminal. They'd brand a C on you or something like that. Lesser crimes, you would get fines, you'd get the short jail time maybe, or you'd get time in the stocks, which is kind of both those pictures, and they would put you kind of in the town center. So there was equal part, that's pretty uncomfortable, but also there's kind of the spectacle nature of it, is everybody got to see, oh, John Smith got in trouble for getting in a fight at a tavern or something like that, and he was locked up in the stock all day. We don't want to do that. Class is going to be our last one. Class is going to be a way it's going to be kind of, you've heard this term before, social class. Today we kind of have, your lower class, middle class, upper class, things like that. In England, class was typically family background. You were born into it. There wasn't much movement. You were either born rich or born poor. Not too many poor people became rich. Not too many rich people became poor. Not that it never happened, but it was just kind of rare. And colonies, you have the chance to kind of make it on your own stake. You can become wealthy. You can become successful. And family wasn't necessarily about how much land you owned, but it was about how much profit you had, the size of your business, things like that. There were some signifiers of kind of upper class. Most of these people are going to be your business, your plantation owners. You're going to see the fancier clothes, things coming in from England, people going to shops to get their stuff, not having to make it on their own. Middle class, this is going to be your farmers and your skilled workers. These are going to be people who own land. Upper and middle class are going to be your people who can vote. Your lower class are going to be your wage workers. So these are going to be the people that are working in the shops for the business owner. These might be the people working on the farm for the farmhands. These folks in many places could not vote. Some places they could, depending on how much they were renting and things like that. But most of the places, the lower class could not vote. And then you have your last one, which is your indentured servants. and your slaves, which we've talked in depth about already. All right, so that's your flip lesson for today. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please hit me up on Schoology. Had a lot of messages last night making sure people could get signed up onto Edpuzzle. I am available after school today, so if you had issues with Edpuzzle last night, you can come in today. That's the music, so we better get going to school today. See you guys later.